All right, thank you very much, Amber. And we want to welcome back to our newscast Congressman Charles Djou. Sir, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me back.
Congressman is back from Washington, D.C., and a bunch of questions we want to ask you. First of all, let's start with the Wall Street Reform Bill that you voted against in Congress. Why did you vote against this bill, and are you afraid that it's going to look like you support Wall Street bankers and their interests as opposed to the people's interests?
Sure. You know, Dan, what's important, I believe, is that we need to reform Wall Street. We need to make sure that we take care of systemic risk and make sure that taxpayer bailouts are put to an end. The problem is, I believe, that the bill that was put before the U.S. House institutionalizes bailouts by the taxpayers of large financial institutions, and I think even worse, doesn't address any of the root causes. We didn't deal with Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, and we didn't reform the bankruptcy code. Because of that, I believe that the bill was incomplete at best, and I voted against it.
Now, this was an example of you split the vote with of course, Congressman Mazie Hirono, who voted for this bill. And isn't any sort of action, some sort of action, where there's nothing redeemable in this bill at all? Those issues that you bring up, isn't that something that can also be brought up in later bills that could be introduced? Why not do something now?
Well, because I think the most important thing we need to do is deal with this financial crisis. Let's make sure we take care of the root causes of the problem. And if we're not going to deal with the root causes of the problem, why are we passing this bill in the first place? If this bill isn't going to do anything, it would not have prevented the financial crisis in late 2008. So consequently, I didn't think this was good legislation, and I voted no on it. And
the measure did pass, so we'll see the results, and perhaps we'll hold your feet to the fire one day on that issue. Let's move on to the Jones Act. You were one of the very public Republicans nationally who said the Jones Act was preventing ships from coming in and helping with the oil spill. Organizations like factcheck.org came along, and they said that those allegations were untrue. Do you still stand by your original statements?
Yeah. Dan, I think it's important for people in Hawaii to understand that I believe in being a zealous and outspoken advocate for the people of Hawaii. The Jones Act has been talked about for years, decades, and not getting any traction or attention. And today it's getting a lot of national attention since I've gotten elected to Congress 6 weeks ago. I believe what is happening in the Gulf is that we need to stop this leak. We need to make sure we clean up the mess and hold BP accountable. And I believe part of that is making sure we don't leave any arrows in our quiver, that we accept help from anyone and from anywhere. And there have been reports from organizations such as the ambassador from the Netherlands saying that a lot of companies, foreign companies, want to come in and help, but don't want to even bother hiring a U.S. attorney and going through the waiver process. I acknowledge that there are some foreign ships in the Gulf operating, but I think there would be far more if we had waived the Jones Act in the Gulf.
But once again, factcheck.org, which is an organization that backed you on some allegations made by your opponents during the special election, they've come out and said that what you're saying actually is not true, that it's not preventing foreign ships from getting there. Were you just using this as a platform because I guess in general you do just disagree with the Jones Act?
Well, I think factcheck.org was looking at something entirely different from what I was examining. Factcheck.org was looking at whether or not there are or are not foreign ships operating in the Gulf to address this fiasco by BP. And they're right. There are foreign ships there. I've estimated about a dozen or so. But could there be more? Would there be more companies actually entering the Gulf and operating if we waived the Jones Act? And I think the answer to that question is yes. And that was a question that factcheck.org did not examine.
All right. Now, there's 3 more questions we want to get to, and we're running out of time. First of all, there is something that you're disappointed in, dealing with the budget in Congress, despite your attempts, no movement on a mention as far as a balanced budget bill? Or?
Right. Yeah, actually, Dan, what I think the public needs to know and understand is that we're spending too much money as it is. I ran on a fiscal conservative platform, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that Congress is making this year is that for the first time since the adoption of modern budget rules in 1974, this year will be the very first year that the U.S. House of Representatives will not pass a budget. Anybody who is concerned about the spending going on in the U.S. Congress has got to be incredibly concerned about this incredibly irresponsible behavior by the U.S. House.
Let's move back here to Hawaii politics. And during one of your town hall meetings recently, your talk story meetings, you mentioned about the problem with Micronesians here in Hawaii because of a recent agreement with, I guess, the territory of Micronesia. Micronesians are allowed to come here via visas, and though they account for 1% of our population now, they account for 30% of, I guess, the use of our social services. Those are numbers according to your office. Why was this something you decided to bring up and mention? And this is a big issue right now in Hawaii.
Yeah. Well, I think this is something that's unfair and unduly burdens the people of Hawaii. The United States government has entered into an agreement with the Republic of Micronesia to allow Micronesian citizens to come into the United States visa-free and not go through any checks. I believe that we should treat the Republic of Micronesia like we treat any other allied nation and require them to get a visa. I think it is unfair that the people of Hawaii, their taxpayers, we have to bear the brunt of the social problems with a lot of these Micronesian citizens coming in, consuming our social services, and not paying any taxes for it. I believe a better approach is we should reform and revise our agreement and allow the Micronesians perhaps to come in with a visa, but instead, the better way to approach it is send the foreign aid check and let the Republic of Micronesia take care of their own citizens.
We've got
Hawaii taxpayers.
maybe 30 seconds left. I have to ask you this one question before we go off to commercial break. You made history on the House floor recently. CNN picked it up. Big story. You were the first member of Congress to use an iPad. And were you surprised by the response you got from this? All of a sudden, I know you're... I hate to say you're looking for headlines, but next thing you know, CNN's talking about you busting out an iPad.
You know, Dan, actually, this is an interesting story in the sense that I actually didn't intend to make history. I did not know that I was going to be the first member of the U.S. Congress to use an iPad. But, you know, I'm very happy to bring the U.S. Congress into the 21st century.
All right. And thank you for that, sir. And thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
You come back. Congressman Charles Djou, of course, and running in the general election coming up in November, right now serving in Congress.